So your baby's sleep cannot be taught. It has to be supported. We've been sold this idea that babies need to learn to sleep, and that if we give in to their cries, that we're mollycoddling them, or we're setting them up for a situation in future where they may realize that every time they cry that you'll be there. And it is such a crock of beep. I can't even, okay? So I used to believe this. Well, I don't know if I ever did actually. I was a registered nurse, and I worked for the past 3 years owning my own nursing practice. But before that, I've been in the system since I was 21. And it really never sat right with me. But when I looked at the literature, when I looked at the studies, when I looked at the books on sleep, I was like, yeah, okay, all right, I can kind of understand it, I kind of get behind it. But the people that have been writing this literature, the dominant narrative within our healthcare system are medical professionals. And medical professionals are amazing at dealing with the body. So, yes, you can look at sleep literature, and I'm not arguing the facts there, but no one was taking into account any anthropological views, any psychological views, and even those vary. But I really think this belief is starting to change, because when you look at how we came to be, in the current landscape of baby sleep, we really did fall for it around the time of the Industrial Revolution. And if you're listening to this episode, you're going to want to hear this, because it will change the way you view baby sleep forever, for every baby that comes into your world. And that's the magnitude of what you're doing in your own home, is changing the world. So I really want to talk about what happened at the turn of the 18th, 19th century. We were in the Industrial Revolution, which is, trains, cars, automobiles, these incredible leaps of technology, but we needed workers, and we needed women to come into the workforce. Things were changing, and there's a few doctors that could be held responsible, but one is Dr. John B. Watson. And he was actually I think he was a medical doctor, but he came out and said that women are ruining their children, and that we are only to feed them every 4 hours, and we're not to go to them when they cry. And now, this man had never been married, he hadn't had children. He was bringing all these ideologies that he'd pretty much plucked out of thin air. Now, if you were a new mum, or if you are a new mum, you know how vulnerable you are to doing the right thing by your child. And so you think, oh my God, I'm going to ruin my kid by responding. Now, this caught on like a pandemic, this idea that we are mollycoddling our children. And it really took off, and it was perpetuated more and more as women headed back into the workforce and were feeling, obviously, exhausted and like they couldn't find any balance. And then we had glorious people like Richard Ferber, who created the Ferber method, who then came out and said that, go in, go out, go in, go out. And I'm actually not against that entirely. I use that within my nursing practice. But the way he did it was very set in stone, there was no nuance to change things up. And then I think around in 2005, he came out and said that he didn't retract what he said, but he said that he had sort of said there was more support available for babies. So Mr. Ferber did a bit of a backwards step there. Maybe he had some grandbabies and saw what he'd been doing. And then we go forth and we have people like Tizzy Hall, who wrote the book Save Our Sleep, who, again, it works, but why does it work? As she very much talks about set schedules, and I have met many a client that has read her book, and it has thrown them into a tizzy of confusion and not knowing what was happening, and specifically around breastfeeding. I think she advocates for timed breastfeeding from pretty much birth, and it's really no longer I would say, evidence-based. When you look at all of the evidence to sleep train your child, especially a very young baby. Now, there are nuances to this. Nothing is black and white. It's not that you have to co-sleep or that you must independently sleep. And none of that is true. The gray area that I have found is that you have to do what feels good to you as a mother. Especially if you are generally, most of us still hold the main caregiving role within our homes. You have to be okay with whatever method you choose. And so if you're closing the door and walking away and letting your baby scream, do you feel okay with that? Now, I would argue any attached, healthy mother does not feel okay with that. But when we are being overridden of messages that when mollycoddling, they have to learn, it can be really confusing. Now, the gray area in baby sleep is that when we are having our babies in our bed next to us, especially if you're a breastfeeding mother, it's like sleeping next to the best restaurant in the world and being like, oh, I won't just get a little snack. It's open 24/7 and it's free. So if you are someone that is maybe trying to work away from co-sleeping, or maybe you've never done it, or maybe you just want to work away from feeding to sleep, that's not the issue. It is purely when we are telling parents to leave our children to scream with no comfort that we are providing, I guess, it's the first rupture of the mother-baby dyad when we encourage that as professionals. So the new narrative that I am trying to teach is that we can have both. We can have a baby that sleeps well overnight, a well-rested mother, but we have to set up and be firm on our decisions. So if you are co-sleeping, it is up to you to decide how to co-sleep best for your family. So for my family, we put our king mattress on the floor. My husband was against the wall. I was next to the baby, and my baby was next to the carpet. And she slept in her own little sleeping bag. I had a sheet and a pillow, a very simple sheet and pillow set up. And my husband did whatever he did on his side of the bed. That worked for us really well. But we made that decision from the get-go to make a really firm stake in the sand decision that we were co-sleeping. The issues with co-sleeping that I hear from mums is things around SIDS, and they're worried that, they're here in Australia, we are told very black and white, the safest place for our babies to sleep is on their back and in their cot. And I agree with that. But it's also safest to not drive a car. It's safest to not eat steak. It's safest to not go swimming. Safest isn't best. Safest is the default mode when our healthcare institutions are worried about legalities. So we can make it safer co-sleeping. The co-sleeping accidents that happen, or the SIDS accidents that happen, are generally in situations where it wasn't planned for to be co-sleeping. So where mum or dad have been so exhausted but also so terrified to have their baby in their bed that they've gotten up in an armchair and fallen asleep, or horrible things like that. And it is always best to prepare and prepare well. And eventually, as your child matures and gets older, it becomes less and less of a risk, but more and more of a bonus. So for me, with my husband, we did a lot of traveling with our first, and co-sleeping worked beautifully because we could just be wherever, feed her wherever, she would sleep wherever. It was perfect. Now, when she turned 2, we actually transitioned her into her own sleep space because I was pregnant and I was really done feeding to sleep and just being there all the time. And we transitioned her into her own bed beautifully. Now, when I say you have to be confident about what you're doing, is that when you decide to go into independent sleep, you have to back yourself with what you're doing. So make an informed decision that, okay, my baby is ready to be in their own sleep space. And how you make that decision should never be after a rough night. It should be in a very neutral mindset, a very calm mindset, because remembering that your baby is going to pick up on your nervous system. So if you are transitioning into independent sleep, there are a few things that we need to look for. So sleep is a biological function. It doesn't need to be taught, But if you are transitioning your baby into their own sleep space, or maybe taking them away from contact sleeping for naps, or you don't want to feed to sleep anymore, when you're making a change, being very slow and deliberate with what you're doing, but also adding in some sleep associations so that they feel safe enough to do that. So the body and brain feel safe enough to rest equals more sleep for your baby. So your baby regulates, especially in the first few weeks, so that newborn period, the first 3 to 4 months, they are regulating off their mother. So their heart rate, their breathing rates, their physical tone, all of that is a part of regulation, okay? So when we are transitioning our baby into their own sleep space, remembering that the Safe Infant Sleeps Associations all recommend 6 months room sharing. When you're ready to do it, making sure that you feel good about your decision, okay? They are able to do it when they're ready organically. So if you're co-sleeping and you don't want to co-sleep anymore, or maybe you're worried that you're going to have a 15-year-old in your bed, it's not the case. It is very often that they will organically hop out of your bed. Now, one client that I saw, I worked with a mum who was done co-sleeping, and she had the bassinet attached to her bed for 8 months. And this baby was massive in this bassinet, but because she hadn't made that deliberate decision to co-sleep, she was just kind of dancing between the line of what do I do? But she made the decision that she wanted to move her baby into her bedroom, which was just across the hall, and she was willing to take the time to do it. So she literally took her baby in the first night, put her in her cot, showed her the cot, got her out, fed her to sleep, transferred her into sleep, and she was up and down maybe 8 times that first night. The second night, she started in the baby's room. She fed her to sleep, put her down, wide awake. Baby didn't really like it, got her out for a cuddle, rocked her to sleep, put her in. Okay, so she was already working away from feeding to sleep. I think night 4 and 5, Bub really started to crack it. And so lots of picking up, putting her in, rubbing her back, and then she arced up again, pick her up, cuddle her, calm her down. So when we are working towards independent sleep, it's really important to know that your baby isn't just going to nail it straight away. But because this mother had made the decision, she knew what to expect, and she was able to provide a safe, calm space for that baby because she was informed in her decision. She knew that this baby was not going to like it, but she also had an array, a delicious toolbox of techniques that she could give this baby that was going to calm this baby down. So if you are deciding on what to do with your baby's sleep, just know that there are always tools, and there is no black and white in baby sleep. I so often see people that vilify independent sleep because we think of independent sleep equals cry it out, and that's so far from the truth, and it is a really unfortunate narrative. But the reality is a lot of people have never worked within the sleep space, and I certainly didn't know that it wasn't black and white. I thought that you had to do one or the other. And had I known what I know now, I probably would have maybe transitioned my first daughter into her cot a little earlier because I was working night shift and late shift. But I truly believed in my heart of hearts, this is 8 years ago, that you had to leave your baby to cry, and that was the only way. So making sure that you are feeling good about your decisions is the number one thing when you are deciding what to do with your baby's sleep. Now, your nervous system is going to become a little dysregulated because you are making change, and change to a baby can feel really scary. So remember that the first thing to form in a baby's womb is their nervous system, their central nervous system. And when our babies are born, they don't have a big frontal lobe yet. They're not logically thinking, oh, mum's just outside the room. Like, no, this is really scary for them. So expecting them to ramp up and get a little more distressed than normal. And so what are you going to do? You're going to lean into regulation yourself, okay? So your cortisol within your body should match your baby's cortisol levels, as in when a mother and baby is in tune, when your baby is stressed, you should feel stressed. That's the sign of a healthy attachment. Why? Because in the wild, we had to stay attuned to our babies, and our babies had to stay attuned to us. Think of it like a giraffe, okay? So a giraffe is about to get chased by a lion, and her baby needs to know when to run. Okay, so when mum's cortisol spikes and she starts running, we want that baby to do the same. So it is not a flaw. It is not a flaw. It is a sign of a very healthy attachment. But we need to layer in some abilities for mum to regulate and regulate her baby. So we want to add in layers of support there for both mum and baby. So maybe we do it when hubby or partner is home, and we can tap in, tap out. So if you have been cuddling the baby and they're beside themselves, or they just want the breast and you've decided that's not going to happen, can we sub in hubby to give Bub a cuddle? And at no point are we going to leave this baby to cry. We want to layer things in. If we're coming into independent sleep, we want to layer things in that maybe mum can take a break from doing. Dads are very good at bum pats. They are very good at rocking. Okay, they are fine. They may not be your baby's first choice, but they are still a brilliant and excellent caregiver. So please make sure you give yourself some support in that. Understanding, if you are embracing independent sleep, that your baby will be in lighter stages of sleep for longer. So when our babies have higher cortisol, or we're changing things up, it is very normal for them to not be able to drop into a deep sleep. Okay, so they might stay in lighter sleep and you might experience worse sleep at first. But it's one of those things that if you stick it out for long enough, and if you take the time, within a week you're going to see incredible changes. Within a month you'll be sleeping. So if you are making those choices to get there, taking the time, being very deliberate about when you start and why you're starting, can make all the difference in the success of your sleep training journey. So just to close out, I really want mothers to know that they don't need to fix their baby's sleep. There's nothing to be fixed. Your baby is designed to sleep. That's what they do. In our newborns, you see that they will probably mimic an awake pattern that they did while they were in utero. As they get towards 8 to 12 weeks, they're going to start to make their own sleepy and awake hormones. So you get longer stretches, and you'll see that they might organically start sleeping a little bit more at night. Around 4 months, you'll see that their sleep changes again. They're going into much more adult sleep cycles. None of this is something to be fixed, but we can always optimize. We can always work on it. And that narrative that we have to leave our babies to sleep, good night, shut the door, they're done, is so old, and it's so damaging. Look at the state of the world right now. Do we need a scientific paper to back that we're feeling unattuned, we're feeling separated, we're feeling like the stress of the world? So we need to be there for our babies. Infancy is where we put the building blocks of a safe inner and outer world for our children. So really know that you are doing, I'm not a particularly religious person, but you are doing God's work. You are doing the job of a mother, and it is the hardest job in the world when it's 2 a.m. and someone's screaming, because I would like to see anyone stay in an employment when it's 2 a.m. and their boss is screaming at them. You'd probably quit, but you can't quit motherhood. And it's one period of your life that you will look back on. And I can look back on all of my babies' very early infancies now and be like, yeah, okay, showing up was the most important thing in the world. The rest of the world could have waited. How can we really follow our intuition with baby sleep, knowing that this is your permission slip to follow your own path in motherhood? Because your mother-in-law might have an opinion. Maybe your sister or sister-in-law are doing the opposite thing. Maybe your best friends train their baby at 8 weeks. You have to be okay and comfortable with the decisions that you make. And this is the first invitation you will get to stand on your own 2 feet, not only as a mother, but as a woman. So thank you so much for joining me. Episode 2, all about baby sleep. I am going to be bringing some more delicious topics your way. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comment box. I am an open book. I'm also Brie Reynolds RN on Instagram and Facebook. But thank you for being here. Talk soon.